Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Neeru Tandon from Department of English, VSST College, Kanpur. We are discussing paper English Language Teaching. In that paper, this particular module titled From Theory to Practice, Constructivism in ELT. Learning is a complex process, and from times immemorial, attempts have been made to understand human learning. Aristotle espoused the empiricist view that knowledge is derived from sensory impressions. In other words, experience is the primary source of knowledge, and anything that is learned is a result of interactions and associations with the environment. The empiricist viewpoint provided the background and framework for behaviorism that became the leading psychological viewpoint of learning in the first half of this particular century. Again, rationalism may be said to have provided the framework for cognitivism in the late 1950s. Plato's rationalist view that knowledge is derived from reason and not senses, and that humans learn by recalling or discovering what already exists in the mind, brought out one of the earliest beliefs in the distinction between mind and matter as regards theories of learning, which have since continued into modern times. Constructivism is not a completely new approach to learning. Many of the philosophical and psychological viewpoints of this century, particularly those that are espoused in the works of Piaget, Brunner, and Woodman, form the basis of constructivism. Constructivism is a theory of learning that states that learning happens when people actively construct their over-knowledge. In other words, people construct their own knowledge by experiencing things and then by reflecting on those experiences. Thus, when we experience something, we engage in our mind and reconcile this experience with our existing ideas and thoughts. They are never in the vacuum. They are always there is a connection between past happenings, between past knowledge and the present knowledge. In so doing, we may change what we believe. We could also discard this new information as irrelevant. In engaging with the mind, we question and assess what we know. We are thus active creators of our own knowledge. So, construction of knowledge leads to authentic authorship and ownership. The knowledge becomes part of the learner, and the learner emerges empowered. Since learning is an active process of knowledge construction, the learning environment is also very, very important. And who can create this learning environment? It's the teacher, along with the learner. Environment should not impart knowledge, but rather support the learner's construction of knowledge. That is the main point of this theory. In constructivism, the age-old metaphor of the mind as a container that is waiting to be filled with knowledge is changed to the metaphor of a mind as an active agent that is engaged in the construction of knowledge. In other words, knowledge is not seen as a commodity that is to be transferred from the expert to the learner. And the learner is not just the transformer that received the knowledge from the teacher and just reproduced it somewhere else, but he is looked at as a construct that is to be pieced together through an active engagement of the mind with the environment. Teachers under constructivism are seen as the guide on the side who facilitates the construction of meaning and knowledge, and not as the sage on the stage who is expected to transfer knowledge to the learners. This one-way expression of the knowledge, like the lecture method, is just opposed by constructivist. According to von Glaserfield, knowledge creation is an ongoing process of construction, evaluation, and modification of constructs. So, this way, we feel that when this construction is going on and on and on, so there cannot be any fixed methodology. The learner also learns while contributing. At the same way, teacher's research process is going on because every time he finds something new to be added to his previous knowledge as well. So in the constructivist class, both the teacher and the learner, they are adding their knowledge through variant ways. As it is said by Galileo, that you cannot teach a man anything. You can only help him find it within himself. It means somewhere teaching is not just an external factor. Teaching is associated with learning. Unless and until learning is there, teaching cannot take place. Now let us know what is constructivism. According to Brooks and Brooks, constructivism is an approach to learning founded on the premise that by reflecting on our experiences, we construct our own understanding of the world we live in. This is the general definition of constructivism. Unlike in behaviorism, the learner is not a blank slate. The learner makes use of his past experiences and cultural factors to construct new information and knowledge. Learning, as is known, an active, contextualized process of constructing knowledge. Information is mentally acted upon and is transformed by learners in order to have meaning. What are the two main approaches to constructivism? That is very important to consider. But before that, let us understand who are the main contributors to constructivism. The first name comes in front of us is Jean Piaget, and he developed the cognitive constructivist theory. He identified mental organizations called schemas that learners use to represent the world and designate action. He believed that there is a biological drive to obtain balance or equilibrium between schema and the environment. Hence, establishing this equilibrium is the primary motivation for changing one's mental structures or affect the learning. He described two processes used by learners in an attempt to attain equilibrium: assimilation and accommodation. Both these, assimilation and accommodation, these are the processes that are used throughout life. Now you can see in this figure where he has identified 4 development stages. It is cognitive developmental stages. First stage, that is the birth till 2 years of age, then 2 to 7 years, and then the creative part comes when 7 to 11 years, and finally that is the formal age, that is 11 years onwards, adulthood that may be called. The second contributor to constructivism is Lev Vygotsky, developed the social development theory. This theory is one of the key foundations of constructivism. He asserted 3 major themes. According to him, social interaction plays a fundamental role in the process of learning. Now, what is social interaction? When that particular language plays a fundamental role in the process of learning, then there comes social interaction. You take help from others and help others in learning a language. Every function in the child's cultural development appears twice. First on the social level and later on the individual level. First between people, that is inter-psychological, and then inside the child, that is intra-psychological. That was said by Vygotsky. He said the more knowledgeable other, that he says MKO, more knowledgeable other, refers to anyone who has a better understanding than the learner with respect to a particular task, process or concept. The MKO is normally thought of as teacher, coach, or even he may be your friend, someone from your peer group. The zone of proximal development, known as ZPD, the distance between a student's ability to perform a task under guidance and or with peer collaboration and the student's ability to solve the problem independently. According to him, learning occurred in this very particular zone. Now let us consider what are the implications of constructivism for ELT pedagogy. We know, okay, understood constructivism as a theory. How and what is the connection between ELT and constructivism? The classroom learning environment should support the learner's construction of knowledge. Learners should be exposed to materials, experiences, and situations that would help them build their own knowledge. Since constructivism emphasizes dialogue, nature of learning, opportunities should be created for dialogue, discussion, and interchange of ideas among the learners. Now you see, what is really this implication carries? That there should be dialogue, and you want that the job of teacher is just to create that atmosphere where dialogue can take place, where discussion can take place, where interchange of ideas can happen. This can be done, that you can just give them a topic of debate, you can give them a topic for group discussion, initiate the discussion and then leave it to them. Let them construct the ideas, let them come forward with their own point of views, and just imagine a situation where they can take an active part. So this interactive learning will definitely construct a better language base. As knowledge is not imparted or transferred and is constructed, teachers should not expect consistency, said by Hannafin. Teachers should instead evaluate students' work from the student's perspective. This is where this theory is different from rest of the theories. That a student's point of view, a student's perspective is equally important, and that should be taken care of. They should be aware of the differences between the word of the learner and the word of the experts. This is the theory propounded by Wood. Now, learning results from a need to return to equilibration after disturbance to a system that was also insisted upon. This means that teachers should create disturbance by asking a thoughtful questions and then provide resources which the students can use to resolve the disturbance and return to equilibration. Under constructivist theory, Learning is an ongoing process and learners integrate chunks of new knowledge into existing knowledge to create new knowledge. Constructivist pedagogy should allow for students to reflect on what they are learning. That is, the learning environment must encourage reflection and abstract thinking. Now you see, in this particular theory, the faith in learners' capability is more. Somewhere the teacher or instructor is making them capable of creation. They want that they should come forward and create something. The capability should be just exposed. So that is why the transfer is not advocated. In constructivism, the learner constructs his own meaning and his own knowledge according to his perspective. The curriculum should therefore support a learner-centered, task-based curriculum which will promote knowledge construction. Since constructivist teaching requires teachers to respond spontaneously to students' discovery, classroom interaction cannot be fully structured. It cannot be pre-planned. Teachers should not plan exactly the lessons to the smallest detail but leave enough time for the spontaneous interaction that are instrumental in knowledge creation. How does constructivism explain learning? Learning, according to constructivists, is the creation of meaning from experience, and meaning is created as opposed to being acquired. Constructivists believe that the mind filters input from the environment and creates its unique reality, unlike the cognitive psychologists who think of the mind as a reference tool to the environment. In other words, knowledge is not transferred from the external world into the minds of the learners. Rather, they themselves build or create their personal interpretations based on their individual experiences and their previous knowledge. Now let us consider what are the important factors that influence learning. Environmental and cognitive factors are both important for learning. This is because the constructivist believes that knowledge is created when these two factors interact. For example, just as the learning of new vocab is enhanced by exposing the students to see and use it in context, it is necessary that the content knowledge should be embedded in the situation in which it is being used. Among the major factors, we can find that students' participation is more important. Now, what role does memory play in learning? Under constructivism, knowledge creation or learning is an ongoing process, and always learner uses his pre-existing knowledge. So, a concept continues to evolve every time. It is used in new situations and new activities. Constructivists thus believe that, according to Brown, understanding is developed through continued situated use and does not crystallize into a categorical definition that can be called up from memory. Now, how does transfer occur? According to the constructivist view, learning always takes place in a context. It is this context that forms an inexorable link with the knowledge embedded in it. Transfer can thus be facilitated by involving the learners in authentic tasks that are anchored in meaningful contexts. Now, what type of learning are best explained by this position? The constructivists believe that it is impossible to isolate units of information or divide knowledge domains based on a hierarchical analysis of relations. However, Jonassen has described three stages of knowledge. Number one, acquisition, introductory, advanced, and expert. So these are the three stages of knowledge acquisition. I repeat, introductory, advanced, and expert. He argues that constructive learning environments are most effective for the stage of advanced knowledge acquisition. where the misconceptions and biases acquired during the introductory stage can be identified later and negotiated as well, and if necessary, then they can be even modified or changed or challenged. There are 3 constructivist design models that can prove to be beneficial while planning ELT lessons using the constructivist approach. Unlike the conventional lessons, where the teacher either gives a verbal explanation or a demonstration and then follows it up by giving practice to the students, the constructivist instructional design models are designed in such a way that they help provoke the teacher to plan lessons that help the learner to discover the knowledge or create meaning themselves. Let us have an example of the constructivist design model, which was developed by George W. Gagnon Jr. and Michael Colley. According to this model, there are 6 elements which a teacher should take into account when planning a lesson. What are these? Number 1 is situation. Develop a situation and ask the students to explain it. This is the job of the instructor or the teacher. He may just develop that particular situation in the classroom for all the learners, and then certain questions, certain problems will arise and they are supposed to explain that. Groupings. Select a way to group the teaching materials and also the students. For example, group work, pair work, whole class can be the part of the class can be have different groups. Then bridge. Build a bridge between the student's prior knowledge and what the student is going to learn. For example, pose a simple problem to solve, initiate the whole class discussion or have students make list or the like. Then questions. Anticipate questions that the students might ask the teacher or that the teacher might have to ask the students in order to help them regarding that particular subject matter. Then exhibit. Encourage students to exhibit their findings, productions. They should not feel shy. They should not just shirk away from explaining or asking questions. Reflections. Solicit the students' reflections on their learning. For example, on what they learned, how they can apply it, what are some of the questions that still remain unanswered, and the like. Now, there is a learning cycle. The 3-step learning model can be applied to many kinds of constructivist activities. The model was previously used in science education. Recently, this model has been taken up by language learners and researchers as well. There is a discovery phase. With the help of various materials used in the classroom, the teacher encourages the students to generate questions and certain kind of hypothesis. Then concept introduction. Teacher helps the students to generate questions and help them to create hypotheses with the design experiments. Then concept application. The students, they work on new problems that are based on the concept and introduced in the first 2 steps. This cycle could be repeated many times throughout the lesson units. There is ICON model. ICON is the information construction model designed by Robert and John Black of Columbia University Teachers College. The model consists of 7 stages. Number 1 is observation, then interpretation construction, then contextualization, then cognitive apprenticeship, collaboration, multiple interpretations, and multiple manifestations. After discussing all this, the major thing remains to be discussed are the techniques in the constructivist ELT classroom. The emphasis is on creative, reflective, interactive modeling and meaning-making activities. The emphasis is on group work, pair work, and on cooperation and collaboration. These activities include designing and pursuing research and projects, role plays, debates, Group discussion, case studies, portfolio creation and evaluation, and writing and performing, maybe song, maybe plays, maybe short stories, anything that can be created well by them. There are certain limitations of constructivism as well. Constructivism lacks structure. Students who require highly structured environment in order to excel may not fare very well. It is not for every kind of learner. A standardized curriculum cannot be followed because constructivism believes that learning is based on prior knowledge. As a lot of group work is promoted, majority voice could tend to prevail as the voice of the quiet standards would not be heard by the group. Only some people participate in the group work and the others contribute only very minimally. There is a tendency to follow the group. One will be the leader, rest of them are ready to follow, whether right or wrong, whether they are learning something or not. And if one will say yes, all will say yes. All these kind of things are being tested in the classroom activities. Constructivism does not promote standard methods of grading as well. Without standardized scores, the teachers may not get to know what the student is struggling with. Time has to be given for reflection. It is therefore time consuming. Teachers do not know how to incorporate constructivist theory into teaching. Also, teachers are resistant to change. Teachers have difficulty transiting classroom activities into learning objectives. To conclude, notwithstanding the limitations, constructivism can have an important place in the learning system. However, it cannot be taken as the absolute approach. Let us think about it. Was John Dewey said, "Were all instructors to realize that the quality of mental process, not the production of correct answers, is the measure of educative growth, something hardly less than a revolution in teaching would be worked."